Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was mentored by Aizawa from day one. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The smell of burnt sugar and ozone lingered in the air, a scent that Izuku Midoriya had come to associate with the crushing weight of reality. He walked with his head down, counting the cracks in the pavement. 1, 2, 3, skipped the fissure where the tree root had broken through. 4, 5. If he focused on the ground, he didn't have to look at the sky, where heroes flew and dreams went to die. His backpack felt lighter than usual. It wasn't physical weight. The charred remains of his hero analysis notebook number 13 were still tucked inside, but the spiritual hollowness of it. The notebook was ruined, much like his future. Without a quirk? No. I don't think you can become a hero. All Might's words echoed in his skull, bouncing around with the violence of a pinball machine. The number one hero. The symbol of peace. The man whose smile had been the sun in Izuku's solar system. Even he had looked at Izuku, really looked at him, and seen nothing but a liability. A fragile vessel. A quirkless nobody. Izuku stopped at a crosswalk, the pedestrian signal chirping a rhythmic, mocking tune. The city of Muzutafa bustled around him. People were laughing, checking their phones, living lives where they weren't cosmic mistakes. Take a swan dive off the roof of the building. Katsuki Bakugo's advice from earlier that afternoon clawed its way to the forefront of his mind. Izuku grit his teeth, his hand clutching the strap of his bag until his knuckles turned white. It was cruel. It was suicide baiting. It was criminal. But was it illogical? That was the terrifying question that had started to take root since All Might had left him on that rooftop. If the premise of a hero is to save people, and a quirkless person in a world of supervillains is more likely to need saving than to do the saving, then his existence as a hero would be a net negative. He would be a burden. A liability. I should go home, Izuku whispered to himself, his voice cracking. Mom is probably making dinner. He turned a corner, taking the long way to avoid the shopping district. He didn't want to see merchandise. He didn't want to see All Might's face plastered on a billboard. He just wanted the silence of his room and the dark. Boom! The ground shuddered. Izuku flinched, his shoulders hiking up to his ears. It was a reflex, ingrained after years of explosions popping off near his desk. But this wasn't a firecracker. This was heavy. Deep. Instinct warred with depression. The fanba inside him, the one who had spent a decade analyzing quirks, twitched. A villain attack? In this area? That sound came from the Tatooine Station shopping district. His feet moved before his brain gave permission. He stopped himself after 2 steps. Why bother? He thought bitterly. You can't do anything. You're just a bystander. A fan with a notebook. But the smoke was rising, a thick, black column twisting into the late afternoon sky like a dark omen. There were sirens, police, fire, ambulance. And screaming. I'll just look, Izuku muttered, lying to himself. Just to see who's working. He ran. The scene was a chaotic tableau of failure. Izuku arrived at the edge of the police barricade, breathless, his lungs burning. The crowd was dense, a wall of onlookers holding up phones, hungry for tragedy or triumph. Izuku squeezed through the gaps, apologizing quietly, until he reached the front line. What he saw stopped his heart. The alleyway was engulfed in flames. Shattered glass littered the street like diamonds. In the center of the inferno was a nightmare he recognized. The sludge villain. The same shifting, viscous mass of sewage and malice that had nearly suffocated Izuku hours ago. The same villain All Might had bottled. He escaped? Izuku's blood ran cold. Did I knock the bottle loose when I grabbed All Might's leg? The guilt hit him like a physical blow to the gut. This was his fault. If he hadn't been so selfish, so desperate to ask a question he already knew the answer to, this villain would be in custody. But where were the heroes? Izuku's eyes darted around the perimeter. Death Arms was there, his massive muscles glistening with sweat, but he was holding back the crowd, not fighting. I can't get close. The hero shouted, shielding his face from the heat. There's nowhere to grip. Kamui Woods was perched on a lamppost, helpless. The fire is my weakness. I'd burn up before I reached him. Empty Lady was stuck outside the narrow alley, her giant form a hindrance rather than a help. They were waiting. They were waiting for someone with the right quirk to show up. They were treating this like a turn-based strategy game where they had drawn a bad hand. But the victim didn't have turns. Through the roaring flames and the shifting muck of the villain's body, Izuku saw a face. It was half-submerged, eyes wide and bloodshot, mouth open in a silent scream as the sludge forced its way down his throat. Explosions popped from the victim's palms, wild, uncontrolled blasts that only served to spread the fires and feed the chaos. Ash blonde hair. Sharp, terrifying red eyes. Kaken. The world went silent. The jeering of the crowd, the roar of the fire, the shouts of the pro-heroes, it all fell away into a muted buzz. Izuku didn't think. There was no strategy. There was no plan. There was no thought of I am quirkless, or I will die. There was only the image of Katsuki Bikugo's eyes. They weren't angry. They weren't arrogant. They were pleading. Help me. Izuku's legs exploded into motion. Hey! Get back here! Death Arms shouted, his hand grasping at empty air where Izuku had been a split second before. Izuku ducked under the yellow police tape. The heat hit him instantly, a solid wall of pressure that singed his eyebrows and dried his contacts. He sprinted toward the monster, his backpack swinging wildly from one strap. What do I do? What do I do? His mind, finally catching up to his body, began to scream. You're going to die. You can't beat him. You have nothing. The sludge villain turned, a giant, liquid eye focusing on the small green blur rushing him. You again? The villain roared, his voice bubbling and distorted. I'll kill you this time, you little pest. A tendril of sludge, thick as a tree trunk, lashed out. Izuku didn't have the reflexes of a hero. He had the reflexes of a victim who had spent 10 years dodging quirk-enhanced beatings. He threw himself into a slide, the asphalt tearing at his school trousers, as the sludge whipped over his head, shattering a storefront window behind him. He scrambled up, momentum carrying him forward. He was in range. Let him go! Izuku screamed. Whatever logic ruled the world, whatever physics dictated combat, Izuku abandoned them. He swung his backpack with every ounce of hysterical strength he possessed. The bag, weighted down by textbooks and the heavy despair of his life, collided with the villain's exposed eye. Splat! The villain recoiled, howling. The fluid consistency of his body wavered for a second. The sludge around Bakugo's mouth loosened. Bakugo gasped, sucking in air, coughing violently. Deku? Kaken! Izuku clawed at the sludge with his bare hands. It felt like digging into wet cement. I couldn't just stand there and watch you die. Get off me! Bakugo wheezed, trying to ignite an explosion, but the slime was suffocating his sweat glands. The villain recovered. The eye that hadn't been hit narrowed with sadistic fury. You realize you missed your death earlier, kid? Fine. I'll take both of you. The sludge rose up, towering over them like a tidal wave of filth. It hardened, forming a massive hammer of compressed fluid. It blocked out the sun. It blocked out the heroes. Izuku stared up at it. He was going to die. He knew it. I'm sorry, Mom. He instinctively shielded Bakugo with his own body, squeezing his eyes shut, waiting for the impact that would end his short, miserable story. But the impact never came. Start over. The voice was dry, tired, and cut through the roar of the fire like a jagged knife. Suddenly, the oppressive weight of the villain's presence vanished. The towering hammer of sludge lost its shape. It didn't slam down, it splashed. The villain screamed, not in anger, but in confusion. My quirk! What happened to my thwip? A gray ribbon, stiff and serrated like a saw blade, shot through the smoke. It wrapped around the villain's liquid bulk, tightening with the sound of cracking bones, or whatever passed for bones in a fluid body. Izuku opened his eyes. Standing atop the police cruiser at the edge of the alley was a man Izuku didn't recognize from any billboard. He looked like a wraith. He was dressed in baggy black clothing, a mess of unkempt black hair floating as if suspended in water. Around his neck hung lengths of the gray cloth. But it was his eyes that froze Izuku. They glowed a piercing, blood-red, contrasting sharply against his pale, tired face. Yellow goggles were pulled down around his neck. Erasure? Izuku's mind supplied the data instantly. pulling from a deeply buried file in his memory. The underground hero, Eraserhead. The man leaped from the car, moving with a fluidity that made the other heroes look sluggish. He landed in the puddles of the villain's collapsing form. Eyes on the target. The man barked, not at the villain, but at the pros standing dumbfounded at the perimeter. Secure the area. Don't let the fire spread. The command snapped Death Arms and Kamui Woods out of their stupor. They sprang into action, handling crowd control and fire containment. Eraserhead didn't look at them. He kept his glowing red eyes fixed on the villain. As long as he looked, the villain was just a pile of sentient muck, unable to harden, unable to expand. You! The villain gurgled, trying to retreat, but the gray cloth, Izuku realized it was a capture weapon made of carbon fiber and metal alloy, was already tightening. Eraserhead yanked the cloth. The villain was pulled off balance, dragging Bakugo and Izuku with him. Let go of the kids, Eraserhead said. It wasn't a request. With a swift, brutal motion, the hero closed the distance. He delivered a sharp knee to the center of the mass where the villain's real body likely resided. The villain gagged, his grip on the boys faltering completely. Bakugo fell forward, coughing up slime. Izuku scrambled back, his hands scraping the pavement. Eraserhead didn't stop. He spun, wrapping the villain entirely in the capture tape, turning the formidable monster into a harmless, bound bundle in seconds. Only then did the man blink. His hair fell back down, and the red glow faded from his eyes. Capture complete, he muttered, sounding bored. He looked at the bottle that had rolled out of the villain's pocket, the one All Might had used. He picked it up, uncorked it, and began shoving the bound slime mass into it with efficient, unglamorous necessity. Silence descended on the alleyway. Then, the crowd erupted. Who is that? He took him down in seconds. Look at the kid! The kid jumped in first. Izuku sat on the asphalt, trembling. Adrenaline was crashing, leaving him shaking and nauseous. He looked over at Bakugo. His childhood friend was glaring at the ground, chest heaving, refusing to meet Izuku's eyes. Are you injured? Izuku looked up. Eraserhead was standing over him. Up close, the hero looked even more exhausted. Stubble lined his jaw, and the bags under his eyes were dark purple bruises. He looked less like a savior and more like a man who hadn't slept in a week. Izuku stammered. I'm okay. Just scrapes. Eraserhead stared at him. The look was intense, analyzing, dissecting. It made Izuku feel like a specimen under a microscope. Get up, the hero said flatly. Izuku scrambled to his feet. Before he could say thank you, the media swarmed. Microphones were shoved into faces. Cameras flashed, blinding in the twilight. Kid! That was amazing! What's your quirk? You were so brave. Death Arms slapped a heavy hand on Izuku's shoulder, but he was looking at Bakugo. You Blondie! You were incredible! That quirk is flashy. You held out like a champ. Another hero, Kamui Woods, turned to Izuku. But you, that was reckless. You have no quirk, do you? You could have gotten yourself killed. You interfered with official hero work. Yeah, Death Arms chimed in, pivoting to scold. You put yourself in danger and made it harder for us. Leave it to the pros next time, kid. Izuku shrank in on himself. They're right. I was just in the way. I caused trouble. Quiet. The word wasn't shouted, but it carried a terrifying weight. The reporter stopped. The heroes froze. Eraserhead stepped between Izuku and the pros. He didn't look at the cameras. He looked at Death Arms with a mix of disdain and boredom. You're scolding the child? Eraserhead asked. Interesting. He jumped the barricade. Death Arms stammered, intimidated by the underground hero's aura. He has no quirk. He's suicidal. And you, Eraserhead pointed a callous finger at the pros, stood there and watched a middle schooler suffocate for 5 minutes. You claimed you had no suitable quirks. You waited for a favorable matchup while a civilian died. The silence was deafening. If this child hadn't created an opening, Eraserhead continued, his voice cold, the victim would be dead before I arrived. The kid acted. You watched. If you want to talk about who is unfit for hero work, we can have that conversation at the licensing board review. Death Arms paled. Kamui Woods looked down at his wooden feet. Eraserhead turned his back on them. He grabbed Izuku by the collar of his uniform, not aggressively, but firmly. You! Come with me. Where? Izuku squeaked, away from the noise. We need to talk. Eraserhead dragged him away from the lights, the cameras, and the praise being heaped on a fuming Bakugo. They walked past the police line, down a side street, and into the shadow of a nondescript building. Only when they were alone did Eraserhead let go. He leaned against the brick wall, crossing his arms. He looked at Izuku for a long time. The silence stretched until Izuku felt like he might vibrate out of his skin. What is your name? Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya. Eraserhead tasted the name. You have no quirk. It wasn't a question. He had seen the way Izuku moved, the lack of energy discharge. No, sir, Izuku whispered, staring at his red shoes. Then why did you run in? Izuku clenched his hands. My legs, they just moved. I couldn't stop them. He looked like he was asking for help. So you decided to commit suicide? Izuku flinched. No. I wanted to save him. With what? Aizawa's voice dropped, harsh and biting. You threw a bag. You clawed at fluid with fingernails. If I hadn't been there, the villain would have killed you both. You didn't save him, Midoriya. You just added another body to the pile. Tears pricked Izuku's eyes. It was exactly what he had told himself. It was the truth. I know, he choked out. I know I'm useless. I couldn't stand there. I didn't say you were useless, Eraserhead said. Izuku paused, sniffing. He looked up. Eraserhead was massaging his temples, looking annoyed. I said you were suicidal. There is a difference. The hero pushed off the wall and crouched down so he was eye level with Izuku. The pros back there were right about one thing, you were reckless. But they were wrong about everything else. They hesitated because they were afraid of looking bad or failing. You didn't hesitate. Eraserhead pointed a finger at Izuku's chest. You have the heart of a hero, Midoriya. That much is obvious. But right now, you have the brain of a victim. The words stung, but they felt different than Bakugo's insults. They felt diagnostic. You value your life so little that you threw it away for a chance to do something. That is illogical. A dead hero saves no one. Izuku wiped his eyes. But without a quirk, what else can I do? Quirks are just tools, Eraserhead said, pulling at the scarf around his neck. I can erase quirks, yes. But once I blink, I'm just a guy in a scarf fighting monsters that can level buildings. Do you think I survive on power? Izuku looked at the capture weapon. No. You used martial arts. And that cloth. Tools. Skills. Preparation. Logic. Eraserhead stood up. The world is full of people with strong quirks who are terrible heroes. And it's full of dead kids who thought having guts was enough. He looked down at Izuku, his expression unreadable. I saw you analyze the situation. You aimed for the eye, a liquid villain's only solid weak point. You created a momentary opening. That was rational. Everything else was garbage. Aizawa reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. He flicked it toward Izuku. Izuku caught it against his chest. It was a simple business card with a minimalist logo, UA High School staff. I teach at UA, Eraserhead said. Izuku's jaw dropped. UA? I'm giving you a choice, Midoriya. You can keep dreaming the way you are now, running into fires with no plan, and you will die before you turn 18. Or, Eraserhead's eyes narrowed, you can let me teach you how to survive your own recklessness. You have zero self-preservation, but you have observation skills and guts. I can work with that. I can teach you to fight. I can teach you to use weapons. I can teach you to be a hero who doesn't need to punch a mountain to solve a problem. Izuku stared at the card. A hero, a pro-hero, was offering to train him. Him? The quirkless Deku? But... Izuku swallowed hard. Can I really be a hero without a quirk? Eraserhead sighed, scratching his stubble. There has never been a quirkless pro-hero. The odds are statistically zero. Izuku's heart sank. But, Eraserhead continued, statistics are just data points from the past. They don't predict the future. You are illogical, Midoriya. Maybe that's what the system needs. He turned to walk away. Be at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. Wear athletic clothes. Don't be late. I expel students who waste my time. Wait! Izuku shouted. Who are you? The man didn't look back. My hero name is Eraserhead. But in the classroom, I am Aizawa. He rounded the corner and vanished into the shadows, leaving Izuku standing alone in the alleyway, clutching the card like it was a holy relic. The walk home was a blur. Izuku felt lightheaded. The despair that had crushed him earlier was gone, replaced by a terrifying, electric anxiety. A pro-hero wanted to train him. Eraserhead. He had heard rumors of the underground hero on deep web forums. A hero who hated the media, who worked in the shadows. It fit. It made sense. If Izuku couldn't be the symbol of peace standing in the daylight, maybe he could be something else. Something quieter. He turned the corner onto his street, his mind racing with possibilities. He would need to buy wrist weights. He would need to study Eraserhead's fighting style. He would need, I am here! Izuku screamed and jumped back as a massive burst of steam exploded from the side of the road. From the mist stepped a towering, muscular figure. The signature blonde bangs. The smile that shone like polished marble. All Might? Izuku shrieked. What are you doing here? Wait, you're shaking. Poof. In a cloud of smoke, the buff form vanished, replaced by the skeletal, emaciated man Izuku had met on the roof. All Might coughed, wiping blood from his mouth with a handkerchief. Young Midoriya, the skinny man rasped. All Might. Izuku lowered his head. I'm sorry about earlier. I know I got in the way, and I made you drop the villain and… No, All Might cut him off. He stepped closer, his hollow eyes intense. I am the one who should apologize. Izuku blinked. Huh, I watched the news, All Might said. I saw the footage. And I was there, in the crowd, useless because I had reached my limit. All Might clenched his fist. I told you that you couldn't be a hero. I told you to be realistic. And yet, when the pros stood back, when I was paralyzed by my own weakness, you moved. The wind blew through the quiet street. You, the one I told to give up, were the only one who acted like a hero. You spurred Eraserhead into action. You saved that boy. All Might looked at Izuku, and for the first time, Izuku saw not a celebrity, but a man. A man who looked guilty. Top heroes have stories about them from their school days, All Might said softly. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku's eyes widened. Tears began to well up again. That happened to you today, didn't it? Yes, Izuku whispered. Young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice gaining strength. You proved me wrong. You can become a hero. Izuku sobbed, his knees hitting the pavement. It was everything he had wanted to hear for 10 years. It was validation from God himself. But then, a memory flashed in his mind. You have the heart of a hero, but the brain of a victim. I can teach you to survive. Aizawa's dry voice cut through the emotion. All Might continued, unaware of Izuku's internal conflict. I have a secret, my boy. My quirk, one for all, is like a torch passed down from one user to the next. I have been looking for a successor, and I want you to inherit it. Izuku stopped crying. He froze. Inherit your quirk? Yes. All Might spread his arms. You will gain my power. You will be the next symbol of peace. 5 hours ago, Izuku would have said yes instantly. He would have fainted from joy. But now, he thought about the sludge villain. He thought about the pros standing around, waiting for the right quirk. He thought about Eraserhead, who fought with nothing but cloth and logic. If he took this power, he would be like All Might. He would be strong. He would be the sun. But Aizawa had offered him something else. A way to be a hero without the magic pill. A way to build himself up from nothing. Is it logical to refuse the strongest quirk in the world? Izuku asked himself. No. That would be idiocy. But is it logical to rely solely on it? All Might, Izuku said, standing up. He wiped his face. His expression was different now. Less starry-eyed, more calculated. If I take this power, Izuku asked, his voice steady, will my body break? All Might blinked, surprised by the pragmatic question. Ah, well, yes. Without proper preparation, your limbs would likely explode. I see. Izuku took a deep breath. I accept your offer, All Might. I want to save people with a smile. All Might beamed. Excellent. Then we start training immediately. I have a plan too, but Izuku interrupted. I have a condition. All Might paused. A condition? I have already accepted a mentorship from another hero, Izuku lied. Well, it was a half-lie. I start training tomorrow morning. I want to continue that training. I need to learn how to fight without your power first. If I rely on a quirk that breaks me, I'll just be a liability again. All Might looked thoughtful. Another hero? Who? Izuku hesitated. If he said Eraserhead, All Might know him. They seemed like total opposites. Would they get along? I'd rather keep it private for now, Izuku said. Until I'm ready. All Might laughed, a burst of blood escaping his lips. A secret training regimen. Very well. It is good to be thorough. As long as you are building your vessel, I have no complaints. Thank you, All Might. Then meet me at Dagoba Beach in 2 days. We have much to discuss. All Might transformed for a split second to flex, then dashed away in his skeletal form, leaving Izuku alone on the street. Izuku reached into his pocket and pulled out the business card. He ran his thumb over the embossed logo. Tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. Dagoba Beach. Wait. Izuku's eyes widened. Eraserhead said Dagoba Beach at 5 a.m. All Might said Dagoba Beach in 2 days. They were going to be at the same place. Oh no, Izuku muttered, a mix of dread and excitement pooling in his stomach. He looked at his hand. He had the offer of the greatest power in the world. And he had the guidance of the most logical man in the world. For the first time in his life, Izuku Midoriya didn't feel like a Deku. He felt like a variable. And he was about to change the equation. He turned toward his house, ready to face his mother, ready to face the future. He had a lot of push-ups to do before sunrise. The alarm clock screamed at 4:30 a.m. For a normal teenager, this hour was a theoretical concept, a time that existed only for bakers and insomniacs. For Izuku Midoriya, it was the starting gun of his new life. He rolled out of bed, his body hitting the floor with a heavy thud. Every muscle fiber he possessed, and several he hadn't known existed until yesterday, ached. It wasn't the good kind of ache, the satisfying burn of a job well done. It was the screaming protest of a sedentary body that had been shocked into a state of emergency. Logic, he mumbled into the carpet. It is logical to get up. Staying on the floor yields 0 results. He dragged himself upright. His room was dark, illuminated only by the streetlights filtering through the blinds. All Might posters lined the walls, a gallery of smiling faces that seemed to watch him with varying degrees of encouragement. Izuku dressed in a dark green tracksuit he had dug out of the back of his closet. He grabbed a protein bar, his notebook, and a water bottle, then tiptoed past his mother's room. Inko Midoriya worried enough as it was. She didn't need to know her son was voluntarily torturing himself before the sun came up. The air outside was crisp, carrying the salty tang of the ocean. Izuku jogged toward the coast. His destination, Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, or, as the locals called it, the trash heap. When Izuku arrived, the sky was a bruised purple, the sun threatening to bleed over the horizon. The smell was atrocious. Wet rot, rusting metal, and old plastic. Mountains of garbage obscured the shoreline, a monument to illegal dumping and public apathy. Standing amidst the filth, looking entirely out of place yet somehow perfectly camouflaged, was Shota Aizawa. The man looked exactly as he had in the alleyway, disheveled, dressed in black, with the captured weapon coiled loosely around his neck like a dormant snake. He was drinking from a jelly pouch. "You're 30 seconds early," Aizawa said, not looking up from a pile of tires he was inspecting. "Acceptable. Good morning, Eraser, Aizawa-sensei." Izuku bowed, nearly tripping over a discarded microwave. Aizawa turned his bloodshot eyes on the boy. "Drop the sensei for now. You aren't in Yui yet. And if you wash out of this training, you never will be. All right." "Yes, sir." Aizawa gestured to the landscape of debris. "Look at this." "What do you see?" Izuku straightened, shifting into analysis mode. "I see a lot of trash." It's a hazard. The currents bring in debris, and people dump illegal waste here because there's no oversight. It blocks the coastline and ruins the ecosystem. That's the civic answer, Aizawa said, crushing the empty jelly pouch in his hand. Now give me the tactical answer. Izuku blinked. He looked again. He saw the towering stacks of unstable fridges. The jagged metal shards hidden in the sand. The maze-like corridors formed by crushed cars and old furniture. It's unstable footing, Izuku ventured. Lots of blind spots. Sharp objects. If a villain attacked here, it would be a nightmare to navigate. Correct, Aizawa nodded. Most heroes train in gyms. They run on flat tracks. They punch bags that don't hit back. But the world isn't flat, Midoriya. It's messy. It's full of tetanus and uneven ground. Aizawa kicked a rusted rim, sending it clattering down a pile. All Might is going to meet you here in 2 days, isn't he? Izuku stiffened. How did you know? I didn't. I guessed. It's the kind of grandiose, symbolic location he likes. Cleaning up the community while cleaning up the spirit. It's very him. Aizawa rolled his eyes. He'll have you moving heavy objects to build raw power. That's fine. You look like a stiff breeze could snap you in half. You need muscle. Izuku looked down at his noodle arms. I know, but muscle without spatial awareness is just a meat shield, Aizawa said. While All Might focuses on your horsepower, I'm going to focus on your suspension and steering. He pointed to the top of a towering heap of trash, a precarious stack of office furniture, tires, and scrap metal about 20 feet high. Get to the top. Do not disturb the pile. If a single can falls, you start over. Izuku stared at the mountain. It looked ready to collapse if a seagull sneezed on it. Sir? That looks dangerous. Villains don't ensure OSHA compliance, Midoriya. Go. Izuku swallowed hard. He approached the pile. He reached out for a handle on a rusted filing cabinet. As soon as he put weight on it, the cabinet shifted with a groan. Logic, he told himself. Don't pull. Balance. He spent the next 2 hours falling, slipping, and cutting his hands. Every time he made a noise, Aizawa would correct him from the ground. You're stomping. Silence your steps. You're relying on your grip strength. Use your core. You're tunnel visioned on the handhold. Look at the whole structure. By the time the sun was fully up, Izuku was covered in grease, sweat, and sand. He had only reached the top once, and he had immediately fallen off when a seagull's did actually sneeze on him. Aizawa checked his watch. Time's up. Go to school. Don't sleep in class. Wait. Izuku panted, wiping grime from his cheek. That's it? Just climbing? Just climbing? Aizawa raised an eyebrow. You engaged your core, your stabilizers, and your situational awareness for 2 hours straight. Tonight, meet me at the address on the card. That's where the real pain starts. As Aizawa walked away, blending into the shadows of the trash, Izuku realized something. He hadn't thought about being quirkless once. He had been too busy trying not to die by avalanche. 2 days later, the beach looked different. Not because it was cleaner, Izuku had barely made a dent, but because the symbol of peace was standing there, vibrating with energy. I am here! All Might bellowed, wearing a white t-shirt that looked 2 sizes too small for his massive frame. To clean the beach, Izuku, who was already sore from 2 nights of Aizawa's intro to urban evasion, which mostly involved being thrown onto mats repeatedly, tried to match the energy. Good morning, All Might! All Might whipped out a stack of papers. Behold! The aim to pass, American Dream Plan. He handed Izuku the schedule. It was terrifying. It detailed every meal, every hour of sleep, and every kilogram of trash to be moved. This beach, All Might gestured grandly, is your vessel. By cleaning it, you will build the body necessary to hold One for All. We have 10 months until the UA entrance exam. You must clear this entire section. Izuku looked at the schedule. It was brutal. But then he noticed something. All Might, Izuku pointed to the evening block. This says rest and study? But I have my other training then. All Might paused, his smile faltering slightly. Ah, yes. The mysterious mentor. Are you sure you can handle both, young Midoriya? This plan is designed to push you to the limit. I have to, Izuku said, his eyes burning with a determination that made All Might step back. You said I need a vessel for the power? But my other teacher said, he said power without control is illogical. I don't want to just be a vessel. I want to be a pilot. All Might laughed, a booming sound that startled a nearby stray cat. A pilot. I like that. Very well. But do not overdo it. If you die from exhaustion, you can't inherit my quirk. And so, the hell began. The routine. Mornings, 5 to 7 o'clock the grind. Under All Might's supervision, Izuku became a beast of burden. He hauled refrigerators on his back. He dragged truck tires through deep sand. He pushed broken cars inch by inch. All Might was a fantastic cheerleader. He shouted encouragement, spotted Izuku on the heavy lifts, and provided philosophical musings about heroism. Heroism is service. All Might would shout as Izuku vomited into a bucket. It is doing the work no one else wants to do. Izuku built muscle. His shoulders broadened. His legs, once stick-thin, began to develop definition. The physical transformation was visible, raw, and explosive. School, 8:30 to 15:30 the blur. Izuku existed in a fugue state. He took notes automatically. He ate his bento, strictly regulated by All Might's diet plan, in silence. Bakugo watched him. He noticed the dark circles under Izuku's eyes. He noticed that Deku didn't flinch as much anymore. He noticed that when he set off a small explosion near Izuku's desk, Izuku didn't jump. He shifted his weight to the balls of his feet, ready to move. It pissed Bakugo off. Evenings, 19 to 2200 hours the dismantling. If mornings were about building the body, evenings were about breaking the mind. The gym Aizawa used wasn't a commercial fitness center. It was a repurposed warehouse in the industrial district, filled with mats, pipes, and silence. Here, sheer strength meant nothing. Punch me, Aizawa would say. Izuku would try. He would put all his new leg strength into a blow. Aizawa would step aside, hook a leg, and Izuku would face-plant into the mat. Telegraphed, Aizawa would drone. You wind up like a cartoon character. Efficient movement is minimal movement. They worked on judo. They worked on parkour. They worked on stealth. Aizawa would turn off the lights in the warehouse and hunt Izuku. If I touch you, you do 50 burpees. Aizawa's voice would drift from the darkness. Izuku learned to breathe silently. He learned to tell the difference between the sound of a rat scurrying and a boot shifting. He learned that being small was an advantage. Month 3 the scarf. The warehouse was cold. November wind rattled the corrugated metal roof. Izuku lay on his back, staring at the rafters, his chest heaving. He had just completed a sparring session where he had managed to stay on his feet for a full 3 minutes against Aizawa. A personal record. Get up, Aizawa said. He walked over to a duffel bag and pulled out something gray and coiled. He tossed it to Izuku. It was heavy. Much heavier than it looked. The fabric felt cool and dry, like snake skin made of cotton. This, Aizawa said, unwinding his own scarf, is a capture weapon. It is made of a carbon fiber and special metal alloy wire woven into the fabric. It responds to microscopic movements of your fingers and wrists. Izuku ran his thumb over the weave. It's stiff. It's a tool. Right now, to you, it's just a rope. To me, it's a limb. Aizawa flicked his wrist. His scarf shot out, wrapped around a punching bag hanging 10 feet away, and constricted. The bag creaked under the pressure. The goal, Aizawa explained, the scarf retracting like a tape measure, is to bypass the enemy's offense. Why block a punch if you can bind the arm? Why chase a villain if you can drag them back? Can I try? Izuku asked, eyes shining. Go ahead. Izuku stood up. He mimicked Aizawa's stance. He threw the scarf forward, willing it to wrap around the dummy. The scarf flopped pathetically onto the floor 3 feet in front of him. It requires momentum, Aizawa said, not hiding his amusement. And visualization. You have to throw the loop, not the end. Try again. Izuku tried again. And again. And again. He hit himself in the face. He tripped over it. He got tangled in a knot so complex Aizawa had to cut him loose, which Aizawa did with a heavy sigh and a mutter about irrational entanglements. This is impossible, Izuku groaned, rubbing a red welt on his cheek. It defies physics. It uses physics, Aizawa corrected. Centrifugal force, friction, tension. You're overthinking it. You're trying to control every inch of the cloth. You only need to control the leading edge. Aizawa stepped closer. Stop trying to be strong. Be fluid. You're building muscle with that morning mentor of yours. I can see the mass you're putting on. It's making you stiff. Izuku froze. You can tell? You walk heavier. Your shoulders are tighter. Strength is good, Midoriya. But if you rely on it, this weapon will reject you. This weapon requires you to be relaxed until the moment of impact. Soft, then hard. Izuku looked at the gray pile in his hands. It was the antithesis of All Might's smash. It wasn't about outputting 100% power. It was about applying 1% of power in the exact right way. I'll practice, Izuku promised. Good. Because if you can't master the basics by the entrance exam, I won't let you use it. And without it, you're just a kid with a punch he can't throw. Month 6, the collision. It was inevitable. The beach was halfway cleared. The piles of trash had been consolidated into organized mountains, leaving vast stretches of pristine white sand. The sunrise was beautiful, reflecting off the water. Izuku was shirtless, sweating profusely as he hauled a rusted truck axle across the sand. He was mumbling to himself, visualizing the trajectory of the capture tape. Release at the apex, snap the wrist, pull the slack. Looking good, young Midoriya. All Might shouted from atop a pile of tires. He was in his buff form, posing dramatically for an audience of seagulls. The vessel is nearly ready. You are becoming a Ford Mustang. Thanks, All Might. Izuku dropped the axle, wiping his forehead. I feel solid. Indeed. Now let us move to the fridge. I have found a particularly heavy one that, Midoriya. The voice cut through the morning air like a frost. All Might froze. He deflated slightly, not physically, but spiritually. He turned his massive head slowly. Standing by the seawall, looking thoroughly unimpressed, was Shota Aizawa. He was wearing his civilian clothes, but the capture scarf was present, as always. He held a coffee cup in one hand and Izuku's forgotten math notebook in the other. Aizawa-sensei. Izuku yelped, instinctively covering his chest as if he'd been caught naked. Eraserhead, All Might boomed, though his smile looked a bit stiff. What a surprise! To see the underground hero enjoying the morning sun. Truly a rare sight. Aizawa ignored the pleasantry. He walked down the concrete steps to the sand, his eyes scanning Izuku's physique. You left this at the warehouse last night, Aizawa said, handing the notebook to Izuku. You were too busy limping home to remember it. Thank you, Izuku squeaked. Aizawa turned to All Might. The size difference was comical. All Might was a tower of American muscle. Aizawa was a slouched line of Japanese cynicism. So, Aizawa said, his voice flat. You're the morning mentor. All Might laughed, hands on his hips. And you are the evening mentor. I must say, I was curious who had caught young Midoriya's attention. I didn't expect someone of your disposition. My disposition? Aizawa's eye twitched. You mean someone who doesn't smile constantly and scream at the ocean? I mean someone who usually works alone. All Might corrected. But seeing the boy now, I suppose I understand. You are teaching him to be sneaky. I'm teaching him to stay alive, Aizawa countered sharply. Which is difficult when you have him hauling industrial waste until his spine compresses. It is building his foundation. All Might argued, stepping forward. He needs power to be a hero. He needs presence. He cannot save the masses from the shadows alone. And what happens when he breaks? Aizawa stepped forward too, not intimidated in the least. I've seen his charts. I've seen how he moves. You're building a cannon, All Might, but you haven't given him a base to fire it from. If he fires that power you're so obsessed with, he'll shatter. Izuku looked between them, terrified. It was like watching Mom and Dad fight, if Dad was a demigod and Mom was a ninja vampire. Please don't fight, Izuku whispered. All Might looked down at Aizawa. I am well aware of the risks. That is why we are preparing his body. He will be the symbol of peace. He doesn't need to be a symbol, Aizawa hissed. He needs to be a hero. Those are different things. Symbols crumble. Heroes adapt. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then Aizawa sighed. He took a sip of his coffee. However, Aizawa admitted, looking at Izuku's arms. I can't deny the results. He has the muscle density to perform the maneuvers I'm teaching him. If he was still the twig he was 6 months ago, my training would have snapped his tendons. All Might blinked. Oh? You approve? I acknowledge the utility, Aizawa corrected. And his reflexes have improved. He dodged a falling beam yesterday without looking. I assume that's your doing? Throwing things at him? I do not throw things at him. All Might protested. I merely encourage dynamic awareness. Right. Aizawa looked at Izuku. Problem child. Yes, sir? Show him. Show him what? Izuku asked. The binding. Izuku looked around. He didn't have his scarf. But there was a thick length of rope hanging from a pile of driftwood. Izuku grabbed the rope. He took a breath. He didn't think about smashing. He thought about the flow. He spun, flicking his wrist. The rope lashed out like a whip, snaking around a loose pipe protruding from the sand. With a sharp tug, Izuku yanked the pipe free and caught it in his other hand. It was smooth. It was fast. It was silent. All Might's eyes widened. Oh my goodness, it's sloppy, Aizawa critiqued. You used too much shoulder. But it worked. All Might looked at Izuku, then at Aizawa. The number one hero's expression softened. Eraserhead, All Might said, his voice dropping the persona for a moment. I may know how to build strength. I know how to inspire. But I have never been good at technique. I have always just been able to do it, Aizawa huffed. Natural geniuses are the worst teachers. Indeed, All Might chuckled. I worried that I was only giving him half of what he needed. I can give him the power. But I cannot teach him how to wield it with finesse. And I can't give him power, Aizawa said. I can only teach him how to maximize what he has. The two heroes looked at each other. A silent understanding passed between them. A truce. We share him, Aizawa stated. You handle the engine. I handled the steering. Agreed. All Might gave a thumbs up. But I insist on the protein shakes. Fine. But if he falls asleep during my stealth drills because he's overtired, I'm sending him to sleep in the teacher's lounge. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. They weren't going to kill each other. And more importantly, they weren't going to make him choose. Month 10, the horizon. The day of the exam was approaching. The beach was unrecognizable. It was no longer a trash heap. It was a pristine stretch of golden sand, the ocean lapping gently at the shore. The sunrise was blinding. Izuku stood atop the final pile of trash, now moved to a designated pickup zone. He was shirtless, screaming at the sky, a primal roar of accomplishment. I did it! All Might stood at the base, weeping tears of manly joy. Oh my goodness! Entertainment. Aizawa stood a little further back, leaning against the seawall. He wasn't crying, but the corner of his mouth was ticked upward by a millimeter. He's loud, Aizawa noted. He is passionate. All Might sobbed. Izuku scrambled down the pile. He stood before his two mentors. He was unrecognizable from the boy in the alleyway. He was scarred, calloused, and muscular. But his eyes were the biggest change. They were sharp. Analytical. I'm ready, Izuku said. All Might wiped his face. Yes. You are. The vessel is complete. He reached up and plucked a single golden hair from his head. Young Midoriya. This is it. The transfer of power. All Might held out the hair. Eat this. Izuku blinked. He looked at the hair. He looked at All Might. Then he looked at Aizawa. Aizawa stared at the hair with a look of profound disgust. That is the most unsanitary, illogical method of DNA transfer I have ever heard of. Is this a joke? It is tradition. All Might defended. Well, not really, but it works. Digestion is the fastest way. Izuku looked at the hair again. Is there no other way? Like a blood sample? Or a spit swab? Eat the hair, Midoriya, Aizawa sighed, checking his watch. We don't have time for a blood drive. The exam starts in 3 hours. If you choke, I'm not giving you CPR. Izuku took the hair. He closed his eyes. He thought about the sludge villain. He thought about the fire. He thought about the months of hauling fridges and getting judo flipped in the dark. He popped the hair into his mouth and swallowed. It was gross. Gross, Izuku gagged. Feel the power! All Might shouted. He won't feel it for a few hours, Aizawa said dryly. It has to digest. Aizawa walked over to Izuku and handed him a box. What's this? Izuku asked. Your gear. For the exam. Izuku opened the box. Inside was a dark green jumpsuit, sturdy, practical, with reinforced knees and elbows. And resting on top was a fresh coil of binding cloth. It's not the alloy wire version, Aizawa said. That's illegal for the entrance exam since it's considered a support weapon. This is standard industrial-grade capture tape. It's weaker, but it will hold if you use it right. Thank you, Aizawa-sensei, Izuku said, clutching the tape. And remember, Aizawa said, his voice dropping low. You have All Might's power inside you now. But you've never used it. You don't know what it will do to you. I know. So don't use it, Aizawa ordered. Unless you have absolutely no other choice. Rely on the tape. Rely on your legs. Rely on your brain. If you break your bones in the first 5 minutes, I will personally ensure you fail. Yes, sir. All Might placed a heavy hand on Izuku's shoulder. Go, young Midoriya. Show them the results of your rational measures. Rational measures? Aizawa raised an eyebrow. That's my phrase. It's our phrase now. All Might laughed. Izuku looked at the two of them, the light and the shadow, the power and the logic. He wrapped the white tape around his neck, tucking the ends into the jumpsuit. He felt the hum of something deep in his stomach, the one for all beginning to wake up. But he also felt the reassuring weight of the cloth against his collarbone. I'm going, Izuku said. He turned and ran toward UA High School. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew they were watching. The gates of UA High School loomed like the entrance to Olympus, shining gold and blue under the late February sun. For thousands of students, these gates represented the threshold of a dream. For Izuku Midoriya, they represented the final exam of a 10-month survival course. He stood on the pavement, the crowd of examinees flowing around him like a river around a stone. He looked different than the boy who had cowered here in his nightmares. His middle school uniform was the same, but the body underneath was denser, compacted with muscle earned through blood, sweat, and the hauling of several tons of illegal waste. But it was his posture that had changed the most. He didn't hunch. He stood with his knees slightly bent, his center of gravity low, his eyes scanning the perimeter, the rooftops, the flow of the crowd. Assessment: high density of potential rivals. Noise levels moderate. No immediate threats. The voice in his head sounded suspiciously like Aizawa's. Izuku touched his stomach. Somewhere in there, digesting alongside a sensible breakfast of rice and fish, was a strand of All Might's hair. The one for all. The torch. He felt nothing. No surging power, no electric hum. Just a vague sense of indigestion. It takes time to metabolize, Aizawa had said. Don't rely on it. It is the power to smash the heavens, All Might had said. 2 voices. 2 philosophies. 1 body. Out of my way, Deku. The growl came from behind him. Izuku shifted his weight instantly, stepping to the side not out of fear, but out of efficiency. Katsuki Bakugo stomped past, his shoulders hunched aggressively. Kaken, Izuku acknowledged, his voice steady. Bakugo paused. He looked back over his shoulder. He had been watching Izuku for months, watching the way he stopped flinching, the way he ran laps with a weighted vest, the way he vanished after school. Bakugo's red eyes narrowed. Don't think just because you did some push-ups you can stand in my ring, Bakugo sneered. I'm going to crush this exam. Don't die. I don't plan to, Izuku replied. Bakugo scoffed and marched toward the building. Izuku watched him go. In the past, that interaction would have left Izuku trembling. Now, he just analyzed the gait. Right leg favoring slightly. Did he overtrain his calves? Izuku took a deep breath. He adjusted the straps of his backpack, feeling the reassuring weight of his hidden gear, and walked through the gates. The written exam. The written portion was grueling, a marathon of mathematics, history, quirk law, and tactical theory. For most students, it was a hurdle. For Izuku, it was a comfort zone. He sat in the silent hall, his pencil moving in a blur. Question 42. A villain with a gigantification quirk is holding a hostage on the 4th floor of a destabilized building. The structural integrity is at 30%. Identify the priority action. A. Engage the villain to draw fire. B. Evacuate the surrounding area. C. Stabilize the building. D. Neutralize the villain immediately. Izuku chewed his lip. The all-might answer was D. Smash the villain, save the day. But the Aizawa answer, if the integrity is 30%, a fight collapses the building. The hostage dies. Drawing fire, A, risks vibration damage. Evacuation, B, is standard but doesn't solve the immediate hostage crisis. Izuku wrote in the margin, option C is the logical prerequisite. Use binding materials to secure the load-bearing pillars or create a net, then neutralize the villain via sedation or gas to prevent thrashing. He circled C. He finished the exam with 10 minutes to spare. He spent the remaining time meditating, visualizing the flow of the capture tape. Wrist snap. Loop. Pull. Center of gravity. The orientation. Everybody say hey. Present mixed voice was a sonic weapon. Izuku sat in the auditorium, surrounded by hundreds of other candidates. The hero was explaining the rules of the practical exam, but Izuku was already dissecting the layout displayed on the screen. Urban setting. Dense structures. Robots. 3 types of villain bots. Present Mike shouted, posing dramatically. 1-pointer, 2-pointer, 3-pointer. You gain points by disabling them. Disabling, Izuku noted. Not destroying. That's a crucial distinction. Most students were visualizing punching through metal. Izuku was thinking about wires. Robots had sensors. They had joints. They had battery packs. If you sever the connection between the optical sensor and the CPU, the robot is blind. If you jam the treads, it's immobile. Excuse me. May I ask a question? A tall boy with glasses and engines in his calves stood up, his hand chopping the air like a metronome. Go ahead, listener. On the handout, there are clearly 4 types of villains listed. Such an error would be the height of shame for a top-tier institution like UA. The boy turned and pointed an accusing finger directly at Izuku. And you? The curly-haired boy. Izuku blinked, pointing at himself. You've been muttering this entire time. It's distracting. If you're here on a sightseeing trip, you should leave immediately. The auditorium snickered. Izuku felt the heat rise in his cheeks. Old habits died hard. Social anxiety was a beast he hadn't fully strangled yet. But then he remembered Aizawa's lesson from the warehouse. Shame is illogical. If someone is distracted by your analysis, that is a failure of their focus, not your volume. Izuku stood up. The room went quiet. I apologize for the noise, Izuku said, his voice trembling slightly but projecting clearly. I was vocalizing the structural weaknesses of the robotic silhouettes displayed on the screen. The 2-pointer has exposed hydraulics on the knee joints. The 3-pointer has a rear exhaust port that likely overheats. I was trying to figure out how to disable them without a strength enhancer. He sat down. Silence. The boy with the glasses stared at him, mouth slightly open. Exposed hydraulics? Okay. Present Mike broke the tension, sweating slightly. Thank you for the detailed analysis. Listener 2234. And to answer the question, the 4th robot is a 0-pointer. It's an obstacle. A gimmick. If you see it, run away. It's not worth your time. Run away, Izuku thought. The logical response to an insurmountable force. The changing room. The locker room was a symphony of nervous energy. Students were stretching, checking their gear, and psyching themselves up. Izuku changed into his dark green jumpsuit. It was made of a heavy canvas material, purchased from an army surplus store with Aizawa's guidance. It had reinforced pads on the elbows and knees and thick-soled combat boots. Around his neck he wound the capture tape. It was white, standard industrial cotton weave, not the carbon alloy Aizawa used, but he had doubled the length. He tucked the ends into his belt pouches, which also contained a small first aid kit and a pair of heavy work gloves. He looked less like a superhero and more like a tactical utilitarian. He looked at his hands. He squeezed them into fists, one for all. It was in there. He could feel a faint warmth in his chest now, like he had swallowed a hot coal. Don't use it, he told himself. Not unless you want to blow your arm off. Battle Center B. The mock city was enormous. It was a sprawling metropolis of concrete and glass, silent and waiting. Izuku stood at the gate, stretching his hamstrings. He saw the girl with the brown bob hair, the one who had almost tripped earlier, standing nearby, looking nervous. He considered saying hello, maybe wishing her luck, but he stopped. Focus. This is a battlefield. Start. There was no countdown. No buzzer. Just present mixed voice screaming from a tower. The other students hesitated, confused. Izuku didn't. There are no countdowns in real fights, Midoriya. The villain attacks when you blink. Izuku launched himself forward. He was the first one through the gate, a green blur sprinting down the main avenue. What? He's going? Hey, wait up! The crowd surged behind him, but Izuku already had the lead. He turned a corner sharply, his boots skidding on the pavement, and found himself face to face with a one-pointer. It was a machine on a single wheel, armed with target-locking arms. Target acquired. It lunged. Izuku didn't punch. He dropped to his knees, sliding under the robot's lunge. As he slid, he whipped the white tape from his neck. Flow. Loop. Pull. The tape snagged the robot's central axle. Izuku rolled to his feet, used his momentum to run past the lamppost, and looped the other end of the tape around the metal pole. The robot turned to chase him. The tape went taut. Crunch. The robot's momentum worked against it. The tape held, and the sudden stop yanked the wheel out from under its chassis. The robot slammed face first into the concrete. Izuku didn't stop to admire his handwork. He jumped onto the downed robot's back, grabbed a handful of exposed wires near the neck, and ripped them out. The robot's red eye faded to black. 1 point. Izuku breathed. He unwound his tape. It was durable, thankfully, and kept running. The observation room. In a dark room filled with monitors, the faculty of UA watched. This year's batch shows promise, Midnight purred, watching a student with laser naval blasts destroy a robot. There is a lot of raw firepower, Cementos agreed. But firepower isn't everything. Look at this one, Ectoplasm pointed to a screen. Battle Center B, Student 2234. No quirk registration listed, but, on the screen, Izuku was scaling the side of a building. He wasn't flying. He was parkouring up the window sills and drain pipes with terrifying speed. He reached the second floor, kicked out a window, and disappeared inside. Moments later, a three-pointer that had been stalking the street below was crushed by a falling air conditioning unit. Izuku appeared at the window, checking the drop. He's using the environment, Mizu, the principal, squeaked delightedly. No quirk usage detected. Pure situational awareness. Who is that? In the back of the room, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, Shota Aizawa watched the screen. A small, terrifying smile played on his lips. He's irrational, Aizawa muttered. But effective. You know him, Eraser? Midnight asked. I know he's not going to die immediately, Aizawa deflected. Watch him. He's not hunting for points. On the screen, Izuku had dropped back to street level. He wasn't running toward the cluster of robots. He was running toward a student who was pinned down by suppressing fire from two two-pointers. Battle Center B 10 minutes in. Izuku was panting. Dust coated his throat. His score was 28. It wasn't enough. He knew the cutoff was usually higher. But he was slowing down. Fighting quirkless was exhausting. Every takedown required a puzzle solution. Trip wire, blind spot, friendly fire. He had tricked two robots into shooting each other. He had jammed a pipe into the gears of another. But his muscles were burning. He turned a corner and saw a boy with a tail. Ojiro, he assumed, struggling with three robots. Izuku didn't think. He saw the flanking robot aiming its gun. Duck! Izuku screamed. He sprinted, unspooling his tape. He threw the weighted end. It wrapped around the gun barrel of the flanking robot. Izuku yanked hard, diverting the aim upward just as it fired. The blast hit a traffic light, showering sparks. Thanks! The tailed boy shouted, spinning to smash the other robots. Izuku didn't stay for the thanks. He moved on. 28 points. I need more. The ground jumped. It wasn't a vibration. It was an earthquake. Izuku stumbled, catching himself on a wall. The air suddenly filled with dust so thick he could taste the concrete. From the end of the main street, a shadow rose. It kept rising. And rising. The 0-pointer. It was bigger than he had imagined. It was taller than the skyscrapers. Its green chassis blocked out the sun. It moved with a grinding, mechanical roar that vibrated in Izuku's chest. Run! It's huge! Forget the points. Go! The other examinees were fleeing. It was a stampede of panic. Izuku turned to run. It was the logical choice. Aizawa had told him. Don't fight a losing battle. Retreat, regroup, reassess. President Mike had said it was an obstacle to avoid. Izuku took a step back. Oh wow! The cry was faint, buried under the roar of the machine and the screams of the students. Izuku froze. He looked back toward the dust cloud. Through the haze he saw her. The girl with the brown bob. She was on the ground. A massive slab of concrete, debris from the robot's advance, had pinned her leg. She was struggling, but she was stuck, and the 0-pointer was looming directly over her. Its massive tread was descending. Logic, she is one person. If I go back I risk death. The probability of saving her without a strength quirk is less than 5%. The probability of dying is 90%. Aizawa's voice, don't be a victim, Midoriya. All Might's voice, meddling where you don't belong is the essence of being a hero. Izuku's body moved. He didn't run away. He ran toward the mountain of metal. Hey! Another student yelled. Are you crazy? Don't go back there. Izuku didn't hear him. He was sprinting harder than he had ever sprinted on the beach. His lungs burned. His legs pumped like pistons. He reached the girl. Can you move? He shouted over the noise. It's stuck. She cried, her face pale with terror. Izuku grabbed the slab. He pulled. He engaged his core, his legs, his back, everything All Might had built. It didn't budge. It was tons of concrete. The shadow of the robot fell over them. The massive metal hand was reaching down, not to grab, but to crush the street. I can't lift it. I can't move her. I have no tools. I have no leverage. I have nothing. No, I have one for all. Izuku looked up at the robot. The faceplate was a glowing array of sensors. If I use it, I break, he thought. Aizawa said I would break. If I don't use it, she dies. The equation was simple. Pain versus death. Izuku let go of the slab. He looked at his legs. Close your eyes, he told the girl. What? Close them. Izuku crouched. He felt the ember in his stomach. He mentally grabbed it and pulled. Power. It flooded him instantly. It wasn't like adrenaline. It was like liquid lightning. It tore through his veins, hot and white. He felt it pull in his legs. Not 100%, he screamed internally. Regulate it. Like the egg in the microwave. 5%. 10%, but the dial was stuck. The floodgate was open. It was all or nothing. Smash! Izuku kicked off the ground. The pavement beneath him shattered into a crater. The wind pressure alone knocked the debris off the girl's leg. Izuku shot into the air like a missile. He ascended past the first floor, the 5th, the 10th. The wind whipped at his face, peeling his lips back from his teeth. He was flying. He was level with the robot's face. The massive machine seemed to pause, its sensors trying to track the projectile. Izuku clenched his right fist. He could feel the power gathering there, swirling, screaming to be let out. He could feel his skin stretching, his bones creaking under the pressure of a power meant for a god, not a boy. Remember the beach. Remember the training. But right now, just punch. Detroit. He swung. Smash! His fist connected with the metal faceplate. The impact was silent for a microsecond, followed by a thunderclap that shattered windows for 3 blocks. The metal crumpled like wet paper. The shockwave tore through the robot's neck, severing the head from the chassis. The massive machine groaned, tilted backward, and began to fall away from the girl. Izuku hovered in the air for a second, suspended in the glory of the strike. Then, the pain hit. His right arm was a ruined mess. It was purple, twisted, and hung uselessly at his side. And then, gravity remembered him. He began to fall. Oh no, the ground was rushing up. He was falling from 20 stories up. My legs are broken from the jump, he realized. My right arm is broken from the punch. I have one left arm. And my tape. Panic flared. He was going to die. He had saved the girl, and now he was going to become a stain on the pavement. Think, problem child, Aizawa's voice. Logic. Terminal velocity. Impact. I can't land. I have to swing. Izuku bit back a scream of pain. He forced his eyes open. The wind was deafening. He saw a building rushing past him. A jagged piece of rebar stuck out from a shattered balcony on the 6th floor. Left hand. Tape. He reached into his pouch with his left hand, his only good limb. He fumbled for the tape. His fingers were numb. Focus! He grabbed the coil. He didn't have time to be precise. He threw the entire bundle toward the building, holding on to the end. Please catch. Please catch. The tape unspooled. It whipped in the wind. It wrapped around the rebar. Izuku gripped the tape with his left hand. He braced himself. This is going to hurt. The tape went taut. Snap. The sudden deceleration was brutal. Izuku's left shoulder screamed as it was nearly pulled from its socket. His body swung violently into the side of the building. Wham! He slammed into the concrete wall, the breath knocked out of him. He hung there, dangling by one arm, 60 feet above the ground. His broken right arm dangled limp. His legs throbbed with agony, but he wasn't dead. The tape held. The industrial weave groaned but didn't snap. Below him, the massive body of the zero-pointer crashed into the ground with an earth-shaking thud, kicking up a cloud of dust. Izuku gasped for air, tears streaming down his face. The pain was blinding. He looked down. The girl, Uraraka, was safe. She was looking up at him, eyes wide with horror and awe. He stopped it, someone whispered. Izuku's grip on the tape began to slip. His left hand was shaking. He couldn't hold on. He slid down the remaining length of the tape, crashing into a pile of rubble at the base of the building. He didn't stick the landing. He rolled, crying out as his broken limbs hit the ground. He came to a stop on his back, staring up at the blue sky. 1 point, he whispered deliriously. At least, 1 point. Then the buzzer sounded. Time's up. The aftermath. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, the murmurs started. Students began to creep out of their hiding spots, gathering around the fallen zero-pointer and the broken boy. Did you see that? He took out the huge one. But look at his arm. It's destroyed. Uraraka limped over to him. She fell to her knees beside him. Hey! Are you okay? Stay with me. Izuku blinked sluggishly. Did you get hurt? No, she sobbed. You saved me. You idiot, you saved me. A small, elderly woman pushed through the crowd. Move aside, dears. Let me see him. Recovery girl. She looked at Izuku's arm and legs. She scared loudly. What a reckless use of power. It's like his body isn't used to his quirk at all. She leaned down. Smooch. Vitality rushed into him, followed immediately by exhausting lethargy. The bones in his arm snapped back into place with sickening cracks. The purple bruising faded to a dull yellow. I can't fix all of this at once, Recovery Girl muttered. It would kill him. We need a stretcher. As two robots lifted Izuku onto a gurney, he turned his head. He saw the camera mounted on a nearby lamppost. He stared right into the lens. The teacher's lounge. The room was silent. On the main screen, the replay of Izuku's jump and smash was frozen. That power. Midnight whispered. It's All Might's. There's no doubt. But the boy, Cementos noted. He destroyed himself to use it. He had 0 combat points before that, Vlad King pointed out. Technically, he failed. Technically, Nisa squeaked, tapping his paws together. But we have other criteria. All Might was sitting in the corner, gripping the armrests of his chair so hard the leather was tearing. He was beaming, tears streaming down his sunken face. He did it. He truly did it. Aizawa stood up. He walked to the screen. He pointed to the frozen image of Izuku swinging from the building by the tape. Look at this, Aizawa said. The other teachers leaned in. He just broke 3 limbs, Aizawa said, his voice devoid of emotion. He was falling to his death. Most pros would have passed out from the shock. But he stayed conscious. He analyzed his fall. He deployed a non-quirk support item to arrest his momentum. Aizawa turned to face the room. His eyes were cold, but there was a fierce pride burning in them. He didn't just use brute force. He used rationality to survive the consequences of brute force. He turned a suicide jump into a calculated risk. He saved the girl, 13 added. That's huge rescue points. 60 rescue points, Niza declared. Plus the logic of his earlier takedowns. I believe we have a clear pass. Aizawa looked back at the screen, at the boy being loaded onto the stretcher. He's going to be a nightmare to teach, Aizawa muttered. Why is that? Midnight asked. Aizawa grinned. It was the wide, terrifying grin that made villains wet themselves, because now he knows he can break his bones and get away with it. I'm going to have to work him twice as hard to make sure he never does it again. Aizawa pulled his capture scarf up to hide his smile. Welcome to the hero course, Midoriya. Class starts on Monday. The morning of the first day at UA High School was crisp, the sky a piercing, unforgiving blue. For most of the incoming freshmen, the air tasted like opportunity. For Izuku Midoriya, it tasted like bile and antiseptic. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror, tying his tie. His hands were steady, a byproduct of months of grip training, but his stomach was doing gymnastics that would have put an Olympic athlete to shame. He looked at his reflection. The dark green UA blazer fit him well, highlighting the broader shoulders he had developed over 10 months of hauling trash. But beneath the pristine uniform, his body was a tapestry of healed trauma. His right arm, though fully functional thanks to Recovery Girl's accelerated healing, still had a phantom ache where the bones had shattered. Rationality, he whispered to the mirror, adjusting the knot. Fear is a reaction to the unknown. The first day of school is a known variable. Therefore, fear is illogical. He grabbed his yellow backpack. Inside, nestled between fresh notebooks and pens, was a coil of industrial-grade capture tape. Aizawa had let him keep the roll from the entrance exam, though the aloe-woven scarf remained locked in the warehouse. You aren't a pro yet, Aizawa had said. Earn the alloy. Survive with the cotton. I'm off. Izuku called out. Izuku! His mother rushed into the hallway, her hands fluttering nervously. You have your tissues? Your handkerchief? You aren't going to break any more bones today, are you? Izuku offered a smile he hoped looked confident. I'll do my best not to, Mom. I'm just going to orientation. Inko Midoriya looked at her son. She saw the new firmness in his jaw, the way he stood with his weight distributed evenly on both feet. He looked like he was going to war, not math class. Be safe, she whispered, hugging him. I will. The door to 1A. The halls of UA were massive, built to accommodate students with gigantification quirks or mutation types. Izuku navigated them with his head on a swivel, unconsciously mapping exits and blind spots. It was a habit he couldn't turn off anymore. He found the door 1A. It was enormous. Here we go, he thought. The elite. He paused, his hand hovering over the handle. He could hear voices inside. Remove your foot from the desk. Such an action is an insult to the upperclassmen who used it before us and the craftsmen who built it. Ha! Like I care about some dusty old desk. What junior high are you from, you side character? Izuku froze. He knew those voices. He slid the door open. Inside, the classroom was bathed in morning light. At a desk near the window, Katsuki Bakugo was leaning back, feet propped up, sneering at a tall boy with glasses and stiff posture, Tenya Ida, the engine-legged examinee from the auditorium. The moment the door opened, the room went silent. It's you! Ida spun around, marching toward Izuku with robotic precision. The one from the exam. The one who figured out the hidden rescue component. Izuku blinked. Hi. I'm Midoriya. I am Tenya Ida, from Semi-Private Academy. Ida extended a hand. I misjudged you completely during the entrance ceremony. I thought you were merely muttering, but you were analyzing the threat, and your action against the 0-pointer. I hate to admit it, but you are the superior student. I wouldn't say superior, Izuku stammered, his face flushing. He wasn't used to praise. He was used to being told he was a pebble on the side of the road. Oh! It's the curly-haired boy. Izuku turned to see Ochako Uraraka bounding over, her face lighting up. You're the one who saved me. I wanted to thank you, but you were taken away by the robots. Is your arm okay? It's healed. Izuku flexed his hand self-consciously. Recovery girl is amazing. That punch was incredible. Uraraka mimed a smash. You went POW and the robot went crunch. But you looked so calm before that. Like you were swinging from that tape like a spider. Hey Deku. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Izuku looked past Uraraka to see Bakugo staring at him. There was no screaming, no explosions. Just a cold, confused scrutiny. Kaken, Izuku nodded. Don't think one lucky punch makes you a hero, Bakugo growled low in his throat. I'm still watching you. You're hiding something. I'm not hiding anything, Izuku said, his voice surprisingly steady. I'm just catching up. Bakugo's eyes narrowed, sensing the shift in the hierarchy. Before he could retort, a sound came from the doorway. Slurp. Izuku whipped around. His instincts flared. Lying on the floor in the hallway, encased in a bright yellow sleeping bag like a demented caterpillar, was a man. He sucked on a jelly pouch, his eyes tired and bloodshot. The class froze. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the caterpillar said, standing up and shedding the sleeping bag in one fluid motion. Time is limited. You kids are not rational enough, the class gasped. Who is that? Is he a teacher? He looks like a homeless person. Izuku felt the blood drain from his face. He stood at attention, his back straightening into a rod. It was him, Shota Aizawa. Eraserhead. The man who had spent the last 10 months beating the weakness out of Izuku in a dark warehouse. Aizawa stepped into the room, scratching his stubble. He wore his black hero costume, the gray binding cloth wrapped loosely around his neck. He scanned the room, his gaze lingering on Izuku for a fraction of a second, a look that promised pain, before sweeping over the rest. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Nice to meet you. Homeroom teacher? The class shrieked in unison. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a stack of blue gym uniforms. Put these on and meet me on the grounds, he said, tossing the uniforms onto the podium. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. The locker room. A quirk test? A boy with red spiky hair, Kurishima, asked as he pulled on his tracksuit. What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? If he's a teacher at UA, he doesn't have to follow tradition, Tokoyami muttered, adjusting his bird-like head. He seems dark. Izuku changed silently. He pulled the heavy cotton tape from his bag. He hesitated for a moment. Does this count as a support item? He remembered Aizawa's words from the beach. If you can't master the basics by the exam, I won't let you use it. He had passed the exam. He had used the tape to survive. He wrapped the white coil around his neck, tucking the ends securely under the collar of his tracksuit. It wasn't the alloy scarf, but it was a comfort. It was a symbol that he wasn't just relying on the volatile power in his veins. Hey Midoriya, a small boy with purple grapes on his head, Mineta, whispered. Why are you wearing a scarf? It's not cold. It's for stability, Izuku lied. Bakugo slammed his locker shut. He glared at the white tape around Izuku's neck. Copying that hobo teacher style now, Deku? You think wrapping yourself in toilet paper is going to save you? Izuku tightened the knot. It saved me last week. Bakugo scoffed and stomped out. The PE grounds. The class gathered on the dirt field. The sun was higher now, beating down on them. Aizawa stood with a clipboard, looking bored. A quirk apprehension test? Uraraka asked, raising her hand. But what about orientation? We're going to miss it. If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for leisurely ceremonies, Aizawa deadpanned. UA's selling point is its freedom. That applies to the teachers as well. He looked at the students. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance run. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school without quirks. Now you'll do them with quirks. He turned to Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the entrance exam. What was your softball throw record in junior high? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk. Aizawa tossed him a ball. Do whatever you want as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo walked to the circle. He stretched his arms, a feral grin spreading across his face. Die. He whispered. He wound up and unleashed an explosion that shook the ground. Die. The ball rocketed into the sky, leaving a trail of smoke. Beep. Aizawa held up the device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! 700 meters? That looks so fun. We can use our quirks as much as we want. Awesome. The atmosphere in the class shifted. Excitement bubbled up. They were finally free to show off. Aizawa lowered the device. His hair shadowed his eyes. Fun? He asked softly. The excitement died instantly. You have 3 years to become a hero. You think it's going to be fun and games the whole time? Aizawa's smile was a jagged, terrifying thing. Right. Let's make this rational. The student who ranks last in total points will be judged to have no potential. He looked directly at Izuku, and will be instantly expelled. Huh? Expelled? Uraraka cried out. It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. That's unfair. Natural disasters, Aizawa said, his voice cutting through the panic. Highway pileups. Rampaging villains. The world is unfair. Heroes are the ones who correct that unfairness. If you wanted to hang out at McDonald's with your friends after school, you came to the wrong place. He pointed to the field. Go beyond. Plus ultra. Overcome it with everything you have. Izuku swallowed hard. He felt the weight of the threat. Aizawa wasn't joking. Izuku had seen him cut people from the training program at the warehouse for showing up late twice. He's testing us, Izuku realized. But he's specifically testing me. He wants to see if I'll break myself again to win, or if I'll accept failure. No. I won't do either. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida and a frog girl, Ajiri, went first. Ida clocked 3.04 seconds. Like a fish in water, or an engine on a track, Aizawa muttered, marking his clipboard. When it was Izuku's turn, he lined up against Bakugo. Don't cry when you lose, Deku, Bakugo hissed. Ready. Go. Bakugo exploded forward, using his blast to propel himself. He crossed the line in 4.13 seconds. Izuku didn't use one for all. He didn't use the tape. He just ran. He pumped his arms, his form perfect, his breathing rhythmic. 7.02 seconds. It was a good time for a human. It was a bad time for a superhero. Slow, Aizawa noted as Izuku jogged back. Izuku grit his teeth. I can't use OFA for a sprint yet. I can't control the output. If I use 100% in my legs, I'll shatter my femurs and fail the rest of the tests. Test 2, grip strength. Shoji, the boy with multiple arms, scored 540 kilograms. Izuku squeezed the device. 56 kilograms. Weak, Aizawa murmured, passing by. Izuku looked at his hand. He knew he was stronger than that. But compared to quirks? He was nothing. Test 3, standing long jump. Most students cleared the sandbox easily using explosions, lasers, or anti-gravity. Izuku stood at the line. Use the tape? He looked at Aizawa. Aizawa was watching him closely. If I use the tape to swing, there's nothing to grab overhead. It's an open field. Izuku jumped. He cleared the sand pit by pure athletic ability, landing with a roll. Average, Aizawa said. Test 4, side steps. My neta was a blur. Izuku was okay. By the time the final event arrived, Izuku was sweating cold fear. He was consistently in the bottom tier. He wasn't last in every event. Mineta was struggling with the physical ones, and the invisible girl wasn't particularly strong, but he was dangerously close to the drop zone. I have to do something, Izuku thought. I have to score high on the ball throw. Test 5, the ball throw. Uraraka stepped up. She touched the ball, floated it, and threw it. It kept going. And going. Infinity. The class cheered. Infinity? That's cheating. That's amazing. Midoriya, Aizawa called out. Izuku walked to the circle. The ball felt heavy in his hand. The class went quiet. They had seen him destroy the zero-pointer. They expected a repeat performance. Is he going to do it again? Kirishima whispered. The arm-breaking smash? If he does, he's out, Ida noted. He can't complete the other tests if he's in the infirmary. Bakugo watched with intense, hateful focus. Show me, Deku. Show me that borrowed power. Izuku stood in the circle. His heart pounded against his ribs. I have to use one for all, he realized. It's the only way to get a score that pulls me out of the bottom. He remembered the feeling of the smash. The pain. The power, Aizawa said to be rational. Breaking my arm isn't rational. But failing is illogical. I have to control it. Think. Not the whole arm. Just the tip. Just the release. He wound up. He felt the power surge. He channeled it into his right arm. Smash! He threw the ball. Error. The ball flew about 46 meters. It landed with a pathetic thud. Izuku blinked. His arm didn't hurt. But the ball, it didn't go anywhere. I tried to use it. Izuku stammered. I felt it. I erased your quirk. The voice was cold and angry. Izuku turned. Aizawa was standing there, his hair defying gravity, floating around his head like a dark halo. His eyes were glowing a piercing red. The capture scarf around his neck was floating too. That entrance exam was definitely not rational enough, Aizawa said, walking toward the circle. Even a kid like you was accepted. You erased it? Izuku asked, his voice shaking. Then, the recognition hit him fully in front of the class. Those goggles. You're the erasure hero. Eraserhead. Eraserhead? The class murmured. Never heard of him. He's an underground hero. Aizawa ignored them. He stepped into Izuku's personal space. From what I watched, Aizawa said, his voice dropping so only Izuku could hear, you can't control your quirk. You plan to become incapacitated again? Were you hoping someone would step in to save you after you broke your bones? No! Izuku protested. I was trying to. Whatever you were trying, it's irrational. Aizawa's scarf shot out, wrapping around Izuku's waist and pulling him closer. You have a powerful quirk. But right now, you're just a cannon that destroys its own deck. If you break your arm here, who saves you? Me? Do you think you can rely on teachers to fix your mess every time? I've been teaching you for 10 months, Midoriya, Aizawa hissed. I taught you to use your head. I taught you to use your surroundings. Why are you suddenly trying to be All Might? The question hit Izuku like a slap. Why am I trying to be All Might? Because All Might gave him the power. Because he felt he owed it to the symbol to use it like a symbol. You have tools, Aizawa whispered, glancing at the white tape around Izuku's neck. You have a brain. Stop dreaming about being a savior who punches problems away and start being a hero who solves them. Aizawa blinked. His hair fell. The red glow faded. I've returned your quirk. You have one more throw. Hurry up and get it over with. Aizawa walked back to the sidelines. Izuku stood in the circle, trembling. He's right. I was panicking. I reverted to smash because it was easy. He touched the white tape around his neck. Capture weapon. Physics. Momentum. One for all. Power. Output. Combine them. Izuku unwound the tape. It was about 10 meters long. What's he doing? Siro asked. Is he giving up? He's taking off his scarf? Uraraka whispered. Izuku tied the end of the tape around the ball. He checked the knot. It was a slip knot, one that would release with a sharp tug. He looked at the field. Centrifugal force, Izuku thought. A sling. He began to spin the ball. He held the other end of the tape. The ball whirred through the air, gathering speed. He's making a sling. Ida gasped. Using the centripetal acceleration to increase the launch velocity without straining his arm, Izuku spun faster. The wind whistled. Faster. Use the legs. Use the core. But physics alone wouldn't beat Bakugo's 700 meters. A sling might get him 100, maybe 150. He needed the boost. The egg in the microwave, Izuku thought. Don't explode the egg. Just heat it up. He focused on the very tip of his right index finger. He gathered the energy of one for all. Not 100%. Not 50%. Just a flick. He felt the veins in his finger glow. Now! Izuku snapped his wrist. He released the slip knot. And at the exact moment of release, he flicked his finger with one for all. Smack! The sound was like a gunshot. The air pressure from his finger flick combined with the insane velocity of the sling. The ball didn't just fly, it vanished. It broke the sound barrier with a sharp crack that made everyone cover their ears. The ball soared. It pierced the clouds. Izuku stood in the circle, his arm extended. His index finger was swollen and purple, broken. But his arm was intact. His legs were steady. He panted, watching the sky. Beep. Aizawa looked at the device. His eyes widened slightly, a microscopic reaction. He turned the screen to the class. 705.3 meters. He beat Bakugo? Kirishima jaw dropped. By 0.1 meters. Siro yelled. That's petty. Izuku clenched his fist, the one that wasn't broken. He looked at Aizawa. Tears of relief pricked his eyes, but he held them back. He held up his bruised finger. Sensei. Izuku said, his voice ringing across the silent field. I can still move. Aizawa looked at the boy. He looked at the tape hanging from his hand. He looked at the calculated, minimal injury. The teacher's lips curled into a genuine, creepy smile. This kid. The explosion. DKU. The scream was feral. Izuku flinched, turning to see Katsuki Bakugo charging at him, explosions popping in his palms. What the hell was that? Tell me. You damn nerd. You're quirkless. How did you do that? Bakugo was fast. He was going to kill him. Izuku instinctively raised his hands, reaching for his tape. Thwip. Suddenly, Bakugo jerked back, gagging. Aizawa's gray capture scarf was wrapped tight around his neck and face, cutting off his trajectory. Gwaff. Bakugo clawed at the cloth. Don't make me use my quirk so much, Aizawa groaned, his hair floating again. I have dry eye. Let me go. Bakugo struggled. He cheated. He used the support tool in his quirk, Aizawa said calmly, tightening the scarf just enough to restrain. You used your explosions. It's the same thing. Stand down, or I'll suspend you right now. Bakugo froze. The threat of suspension pierced his rage. Aizawa released him. Bakugo stumbled back, rubbing his neck. He glared at Izuku with a mixture of hatred and confusion so deep it looked painful. We're not done, Bakugo mouthed. Izuku met his gaze. I know. The results. The sun was setting. The students gathered around the holographic display. Here are the results, Aizawa said. The total is the sum of your performance in all events. Izuku closed his eyes. He had bombed the sprint and grip test. He was average on the jumps. He had aced the ball throw. He opened his eyes. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 10. Izuku Midoriya. 20. Minoru Mineta. I'm 10th? Izuku breathed. I'm not last. I'm last. Mineta shrieked, falling to his knees. My life is over. The harems. The glory. Gone. Aizawa stepped forward. He looked at Mineta, then at the rest of the class. By the way, the expulsion was a logical ruse. Ha! It was a deception to draw out your upper limits, Aizawa said, his face completely blank. What? The class screamed. Of course it was a lie, Yaoyorozu sighed, hand on her chest. It was obvious if you thought about it. No, Izuku thought, looking at Aizawa's eyes. It wasn't a lie. If I had broken my arm and scored 0, he would have sent me home. Aizawa caught Izuku's eye. He gave a barely perceptible nod. Midoriya, Aizawa said. Go to the nurse's office. Have recovery girl fix that finger. It's inefficient to walk around with broken digits. Yes, sir. And tomorrow, Aizawa added, turning to walk away. Bring the alloy scarf. You earned it. Izuku froze. A smile, real and bright, broke across his face. Yes, sensei. Bonus scene, the gate. As Izuku walked out of the school gates that evening, his finger bandaged, he felt lighter than air. Midoriya! Ida ran up to him, with Uraraka close behind. That was intense. Uraraka cheered. You were so cool at the end. The way you whipped that ball. Indeed, Ida adjusted his glasses. Using the capture tape as a sling, ingenious. It seems I misjudged the utility of such items. Thanks, Izuku rubbed the back of his neck. I just had to figure something out. Hey, Uraraka tilted her head. I'm Uraraka Ochako. And this is Ida Tenya. What's your name again? Midoriya. Deku? Deku? Izuku blinked. Yeah. Bakugo called you that. Deku. Oh, Izuku winced. Actually, my name is Izuku. Deku is just what Kaken calls me to make fun of me. It means useless. Oh, that's mean. Uraraka frowned. But I kinda like it. Huh, it sounds like Dikairo. Like you can do it. She punched the air. I think it sounds like a hero name. Izuku stopped walking. Deku, useless. Wooden doll. Nothing. You can do it. He thought about the last 10 months. He thought about Aizawa telling him to be rational. He thought about All Might telling him to be a symbol. Deku, Izuku whispered. He looked at Uraraka. I like it too, he said, blushing furiously. You can call me Deku. Really? You accepted that so easily? Ida exclaimed. As they walked toward the station, chatting about the day, Izuku felt the white tape in his pocket. He wasn't useless anymore. He was calculating. He was prepared. And tomorrow, he would be a hero.